All right, are we good? Okay, I think we're good. Just gonna talk. Let's just talk right away. Get into some business. How are you doing? Welcome. Welcome to the stream. Today's vague topic that we'll address in more detail a little bit later on is the potential, I'll put potential in quotes for now, potential for an acquisition of Disney by Apple. But really, the actual topic here is potential acquisition of Disney by anyone. That's sort of the meat of the matter, and it's something that I was only made aware of very recently. It was only, I think one of the other weeks when we were looking at some of the animation news over on Cartoon Brew, which, by the way, I'll go ahead and pull up Cartoon Brew, see if there's anything new to talk about. But there was an article there that was detailing some of the drama around Chapek's installation as CEO, and then his ousting as CEO very shortly after he took that role at Disney, and Iger being reinstated as CEO of Disney. It was a whole thing. But something that was just kind of mentioned almost offhandedly in that article was, hey, by the way, Disney has been considering splitting up its operations, basically. So, like, I think between TV and news stuff, let's see. Let's clarify this so I don't get it wrong. Okay, so yeah, it's traditional TV entities, which aren't just from the Fox acquisition from a few years back. They already owned ABC, which has ESPN and a number of other things. So the idea was to kind of section those off to say, okay, here's our traditional TV stuff that's broadcast TV, that's its own thing. Sure, we own it, but we don't want to act like we own it. And then over here is the stuff you think of when you think of Disney. Here's the animated feature films, here's Pixar, here's Star Wars, here's Marvel, here's Disney Plus as a whole. Anyway, so that just came up by sheer chance. I had not heard this particular rumor before. Apparently there has been some more credible reports, I guess, of Iger himself talking about the possibility of an acquisition in general and saying that that was kind of a goal for him. I think I have something, one of these, we'll get there. We'll get to it in a little bit. Anyway, the general idea of Disney, one of the, as we already know, the biggest voice in animation, bar none, but also one of the largest media entities in the world, with control over some of the most influential and currently popular franchises in the world. That's been a big focus for us here in the animation fandom. I don't know what to call it. People who like animation. We've talked about that quite a bit over the last 5 to 8 years. It's just the sheer number of acquisitions we've seen on the part of Disney. Just snatching up all these different companies and all these different IPs. And initially, that was scary in its own right. That was weird. Certainly for me, it was concerning. Just the idea of Disney owning Star Wars alone was completely insane. And it also made me worry about the direction of the franchise. Just because I assume they would also exert creative control over any new installations of these franchises they had acquired. Long story short, I never saw Disney as wanting to play Little Spoon all of a sudden. I really thought they were just big fish all the time, every time, and that's what you typically get. Just companies getting bigger and bigger and bigger, more influence, more power. Very strange all of a sudden. At least from my perspective, to hear even the possibility of Disney wanting to be acquired by another big giant company. But like I said, we'll get to it in a little bit after I change the music, because I hate this music. It's a lot of Nintendo music, and sometimes Nintendo music just sounds too much like a carnival. That's also something that my when I was a little kid and I got my Game Boy Color, I was playing the old Pokemon games, and I have a very specific memory of, obviously I was playing those games all the time, putting in many hours because that's what I was supposed to do. And there was one day I was playing it, and my mom was just so annoyed by the tinny 8-bit music coming out of the terrible Game Boy speaker, and she was like, it just sounds like a merry-go-round, or it sounds like an amusement park all the time. And I thought, oh, that actually sounds pretty cool. That sounds great. Never even thinking that this would eventually feel like weird old-fashioned video game music. Anyway, but yeah, Nintendo can do that quite a bit with some of their music stuff. It works in the context of the game. It doesn't really work in other contexts. Anyway, welcome again to the stream. Yeah, I'll just hang out and chat for a while. If we don't have a bunch to talk about, then you know we'll all go our separate ways. And I'll talk a little bit about the next video I'm planning to post on the channel if anyone's interested. But before all that, I just like to look at some of the animation and animation adjacent news here on Cartoon Brew because they're a pretty good resource. They're one of the only animation resources I'm aware of, and they actually do seem to do a pretty good job of reporting on things that most of us would care about as fans of animation. For example, director of photography who worked on famous stop-motion movies passed away, and this is the horrible thing. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with this work. Usually it stops with director. Even as like a teenager or a college student, when I was getting much more into movies or having more of an interest in filmmaking, I never got much further than looking at the director. Maybe the screenwriter every once in a while, but cinematographers, editors, technical, professionals on the crew, I just never made it that far. And it's just unfortunate. I think a lot of people end up doing that kind of thing. But here you go. Big Henry Selick collaborator. And even that, by the way, is still kind of funny to me, the way that Nightmare Before Christmas will basically only ever be seen as a Tim Burton movie, despite the fact that he didn't direct the movie at all. Tim Burton did a lot of the designs and planning, but it's a Henry Selick movie. But people will, I think, forever associate him more closely with Coraline than anything else. Anyway, also James and the Giant Peach, excellent. Excellent. Oh my goodness. James and the Giant Peach is something we might have to talk about that sometime soon, because it's definitely one of those it's one of those movies where, I mean, forget the fact that I only knew directors' names around that time. When James and the Giant Peach was brand new, had no idea what a director even was, really. But I knew that I wanted to watch James and the Giant Peach. I hadn't even read the book before. I had no idea about what it was. But just the look, just that stop motion look, the character designs, and I don't think I even got the sense that it was a musical when they were advertising it back then. I think I largely just got the sense, oh, this is a cool animated movie. Looks neat, and it looks kind of creepy. And that was another major part of the appeal of stop motion as a kid, and arguably still today too, is that there's so much more potential, I think, or at least a significant and a unique potential to portray creepy environments, creepy characters, but that sort of ride the line between being genuinely sort of scary and unsettling and cute, lovable, adorable. Again, Nightmare Before Christmas is probably the poster boy for that whole concept, but it absolutely applies to James and the Giant Peach as well. So that was one that I was just crazy excited for when it was first coming out, and rightfully so. And it's also a movie that I left behind for many years. I did not think about that movie for a really long time, and only within the last few years have I sort of returned to it. and just I've taken on a new appreciation for how special that movie is, even though, if I remember correctly, it wasn't financially successful at the time. But there you have it. Very sad. Pete, I'll say Kozaczyk. I think that's okay for me to botch the pronunciation. A lot of my heritage is Eastern European, so we have names very similar to that. But again, directors of photography or cinematography in relation to animation in general, just not something we tend to think about a lot, or at least I don't. It's not something we tend to talk about a lot. I can definitely say that confidently about animation channels here on YouTube. It's a shame. So much of the credit, just in general, for how a movie turns out, especially if it turns out well, goes to the director. And basically no one else, despite the fact that it takes many, many people to actually have something come together and be successful. Which also reminds me, I'll move on in just a second, but that does remind me of the story behind the special credits intro for Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, the first one, which I think was co-directed by Lord and Miller, and then they were heavily involved in the screenwriting too, as far as I know. I think it had another set of directors that got sent on their way, I suppose. But there's a funny line that comes up in the opening credits of that movie, that where they would usually do not the studio logos, but where they mention all the studios yet again, like a collaboration between, you know, this production company, this distribution company, this major studio. So right then, it comes up with the line, a film by a lot of people. I think that's the wording, but I might be paraphrasing. And in a much later BAFTA masterclass that Lord and Miller did over in the UK, which is a great watch, by the way. It's pretty sure it's still free on YouTube. They just post that stuff. They don't care too much. They mention that specifically. They mention, first of all, how difficult of a project Cloudy was in the first place, and like how weird it was to come into that project when it had already been started and as relatively new directors who people maybe didn't trust very much. But over time, obviously, they pulled it off. Obviously, it was an extremely successful movie in terms of the filmmaking itself and the comedy, I think. But beyond that, they said, yeah, we really wanted to prioritize that little joke or that little mention in the credits. I don't think they consider it a joke, really, but but they just feel that very strongly. They felt a need to acknowledge of just how many people work on a movie, and that you can't immediately go to, oh, it's the directors, it's the producers, they're the most important. Obviously, they're responsible for how something turns out, but they're definitely not where the credit should end. What do we have here? Okay. Hair Love adaptation. Oh yeah. I think I heard about this, actually. That it's being adapted, right? Wasn't it an Oscar short a few years back? Max, which I will continue to call HBO Max for at least another 6 months, does actually seem like a decent place for that, just in terms of quality animation in general. Although I'm curious to hear what style of show it is supposed to be. Like, is it supposed to be a family sitcom? I doubt it would be like a children's show, right? Adapted into a book. Yep, that's great. Okay, let's see. What else you got for me here? Featured A-list voice cast, that's great. Got a bunch of celebrities there. Oh, it's just an interview. Okay. At a time when most platforms and broadcasters are flooding the market with high-concept animated series. Okay. Little bit wondering about that. Atomic Cartoons, we know them, right? Aren't they a Canadian studio? Toronto, yeah. I think they came up when I was doing some research for the non-existent video about Canadian animation. I think so. I love that you said it reminded you of a 1990s family sitcom. Okay, well... um, I mean, it's nice how efficiently my question was answered, and it's also kind of nice that my random prediction of what it would be was exactly correct. 90s family sitcom. Okay. I'm not against that idea at all. I kind of feel like we've moved past the period in time when family sitcoms were really relevant and popular, and so I'm worried that might potentially harm the popularity of this show, but that's just, random speculation. Right? I mean, what was that Goldberg show, or like Modern Family, I guess you could consider contemporary family sitcom shows, relatively recent family sitcoms. Even so, there's a limited reach inherently. Also, this is a very short interview, unless it was cut down a bunch. Either way, there you go. Yeah, so I think I had heard it was being adapted, but either way, it's cool it's being adapted. Again, Max is a good place for it. Why not? Great, but I didn't know that it was coming out anytime soon. All right, what else we got? Some ads for things. For software. Movie. NFT financed animated series Stoner Cats, co-created by Pixar vet Ash Brannon, fined $1 million. Very quickly, should we just very quickly read over some of the details on this one? Stoner Cats is an animated series about house cats that become sentient after exposure to medical marijuana. It's medical marijuana specifically, you gotta be aware of that. They released 6 episodes. And they made a bunch of NFTs. Okay. Right. Profits because it has resale values in the secondary market to rise. Okay, so kind of a weird sort of insider trading, I suppose, where they knew that the potential success of medical marijuana, they knew that the potential success of the series, or just like it's being out there at all and getting some kind of social media traction, would increase the value of their associated NFTs, which makes sense. But again, if we're doing some basic math here, it sounds like this was the initial fundraising was about 8 million. They were fined 1 million. So obviously it's not great for optics to get sued by the SEC. It doesn't seem like it would have that terrible a financial impact on the people behind the project. There you go. Second Trolls Band Together trailer features first new NSYNC song in 20 years. You know what? I think I said this on... I think I said this on a previous stream, and I'll try not to turn it into a giant rant today also. I think we tend to be way too hard on the Trolls series / franchise, because that's what it is at this point. They have not really stopped. They've taken a few breaks, but they have not stopped overall production. It's still happening. And I cannot say that the quality of the movies is really that bad at all. In fact, I think the quality in terms of overall visuals and presentation is very good. These are generally pretty good-looking movies that are clearly using state-of-the-art technology and rendering and all that stuff. And especially in a world, the world we live in, where the Super Mario Brothers movie is one of the most popular, successful mainstream animated movies in many years. You can't talk down to Trolls. Like, you can't have it both ways. You know, you love the Mario Brothers movie for uh how colorful it is, or because I'm trying to remember what happened in the movie. You think the father-son dynamic is just excellent between Mario and his father? You can't turn around and in the same breath act like Trolls is the scum of the earth, and it's no good, and it's nobody should watch this, nobody should take their kids to see this movie. Just doesn't make sense to me at all. And this sentence, this headline, the second trailer for a new Trolls movie features the first new NSYNC song in 20 years, is such a gift. It's such a gift of just dumb, absurd, modern day reality. And I am really beginning to appreciate it. I kind of want to watch the trailer now, but I'll get dinged for copyright stuff, I can guarantee it. Especially if I play the music, which I would not do. Yeah. Trippy. How many times can we use the word trippy? Should we just... Well, they say psychedelic here. Should we just do a quick search for trippy? How many? Oh, only one. How about psychedelic? Did I spell that right? Two mentions of psychedelic. Wow, it's different articles. Either way. So that word's going to be busted out many times during the review cycle. You can count on that. Kind of looking forward to it. We'll see. We'll see how that turns out. We don't need to talk about Justin Roiland. No, we don't. Let's see. We did talk previously about the unionization of some VFX artists working in the industry. Very on board with that. Also, a little, since we have talked about the WGA and SAG strikes here on the channel a couple of times by now, I wanted to briefly mention that someone in my building, it had to be one of there are a couple actors around everywhere because it's LA, and one of somebody left a little flyer in our building lobby. I don't know. Yeah, why not? I'll show it just on my phone. There's a special book you can buy that's kind of like a satirical children's book, I think, about the nature of the labor relationship between the actors, writers, and you know, higher ups at the major studios and things, called The Elves and the Shoemakers. Yep, there you go. And it's written by Emmy-nominated WGA writers. Why not Emmy-winning writers? That's mean. That's mean. They're fine. I'm sure it's really good. But there you go. You can buy a copy of this book specifically to support the strike, I suppose. I don't know if it goes to funding the strike efforts or if it helps people have a little bit of money to get through the strike. I don't know. But either way, I thought it was fun. Fun to see that pop up. And I probably will. I'd like to look into it. In fact, why not right now? I'll do some Googling and see if it's worth our time. In the meantime, anything else here? This sounds vaguely interesting. A new movie called The Twits. 2025. Sounds like it's from the UK. It's the first animated release of a doll adaptation. Okay. All right. Sure. I didn't know about the animated Charlie and the Chocolate Factory either, but there you go. The Twits. Let's read a couple of details. Directed by Phil Johnson. Ralph Breaks the Internet. Wow, that's the credit they go to. Katie Shanahan worked on Centaur World. Cool. I do like Centaur World now. Okay. Okay. Anything else? They're the meanest, smelliest, nastiest people in the world. And they operate the most disgusting, most dangerous, most idiotic amusement park in the world, Twitlandia. Okay. Okay. Magical animals. Wild ride of a film. This sounds like this is ad copy, right? This is marketing copy. chock full of the twit's beloved tricks, from the wormy spaghetti to the dreaded shrinks. Why an M dash here? The Twits is also a story for our times about the never-ending battle between cruelty and empathy. Okay. And this was the director's favorite book when he was a kid. Sure. I would say that too. Sorry, I'm being snarky again. Probably is really his favorite children's book. Yeah, that's fair. You're allowed to think that way. Anything else between I ramble for a bit about the Disney acquisition stuff? I don't think so. Some new shorts. Yeah, we talked about this last week too, but this is when the potential Oscar nominees for like animation shorts in particular come up. But we'll see. Again, I would like to watch a lot of those, but I don't. It's hard to get them in the first place, unless you're getting invited to film festivals and stuff like that, and I don't. Can you imagine? Do you think I could apply for like a media pass to the Toronto Film Festival or Cannes or Venice? And I would be like, here's my credentials. Here's my YouTube channel. I sometimes talk about movies. What do you think? Who knows? It might work. Might work. They'll be like, these internet people. We have to invite these internet people now. Or just buy tickets. I guess I could just buy tickets to the film festivals. Tudes, welcome back, Tudes. It's good to see you here. How's it going? Tude says, please don't tell me one of the twits will be modeled after Trump. I mean, first of all, very funny. I like it. But beyond that, I mean, should we make an argument for that? Here's our image. I mean, maybe like alternate universe Trump, or in the old like Looney Tunes cartoons when there were bottles of like hair growth serum, so wherever you poured it, the hair would just shoot out. So if you like sat on Trump's head or put it in some kind of garbage compactor and then poured the hair tonic stuff all over like the ring around his head, then yes, it's certainly his body type. We can confirm that. Also, what is this? Oh, it's like a paintbrush. For a second, I thought it was like a rubber glove that was just stuffed into like a stick holder thing, but no, it is in fact a paintbrush. This seems to be glue of some kind. That slide looks fun though. It would be tough to sort of make the climb, but otherwise looks quite fun. Did it even say like what the studio is? Did I just I'm sure I just passed it. Jellyfish Pictures, Spirit Untamed, which I did not see. What else do they have for us? Anyway, how you doing, Tudes? What's going on? Welcome back, Ugo. It's good to see you. Ugo says, what? Trump is a solid 200 pounds. Emphasis on solid? I feel like he's just gelatin kind of poured into a container. Is this talk going to upset somebody? I don't think so. I don't think we need to worry about that too much here on the channel. So was Spirit Untamed this studio's very first project? Hang on. I do want to find that out, but again, I'll have to grab a tab over here. Let's see what we got. We'll just go to their website. Maybe they do like, you know, commission commercial work or something like that. Let's see, what do you got? Our work. Oh, that's kind of a nice website. What did Toot say? Toot says, I hadn't seen the picture. I was just going out of the text you were reading, and specifically the reference to the modern day. Gotcha. Fair enough. Well, I'm glad we were able to look at the picture then and confirm that Trump does seem to be the model for that character. So here we go. And Toot is doing good, eating corn. I'm happy to hear it. This past summer was kind of the summer of corn. Every summer is the summer of corn, but specifically this one, I just kept thinking, okay, the nutritional value is low, but so is the negative impact of corn. You know, like it's not that bad eating corn off the cob. So I just kept buying corn. And that's what I would snack on, which sounds very dumb. Ugo says, Spirit, was that not a DreamWorks movie? So this is the, you're correct. I think the original Spirit was definitely a DreamWorks movie. But Spirit Untamed is the one from, like, was it last year or the year before? In India? Oh, let's just say of a studio in India. I see. Yeah, so this was a CG sequel, basically. Or a remake? I didn't see it. The most striking thing about DreamWorks' latest is that it's coming out exclusively in theaters. So DreamWorks has the ownership, of course, but it wasn't DreamWorks Animation Studios that created it, that actually managed the animation. So it gets confusing. The same thing happens with Disney animation stuff, right? Like there are multiple studios within Disney that are called Disney that handle animation, and they also work with outside studios. So it's kind of funny. Anyway, so they did that. I didn't watch it, but it sounds like it was not very successful. Here's some stuff. Here's some other things that Jellyfish Pictures has done based in the UK. They did some kind of work on Asteroid City. I would assume 2D. Did anyone else watch that movie? Not in the world, but did anyone here watch that movie? They worked on The Creator, which is coming out soon. Okay, so is it all animation stuff, or do they also do... They also do VFX work. Okay. All right, let's really focus in on animation series and animation feature. So... Okay. Were they lead studio on this? Or did they just help out? Spirit Untamed, Boss Baby 2. And then some... Dennis and Nasher is maybe the most British sounding title. If we remove Unleashed. And just the look of these characters, my god. Blitz and Bob, yeah, so some of this stuff doesn't look especially good. Or high budget. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. You make your money, you know, however you can make it. It's fine. But yeah, can you tell me more about what you were doing? I guess VFX? Supporting role. Thank you. Thank you, website. We work closely with DreamWorks. I was gonna say, I really thought Bad Guys was specifically DreamWorks Animation, so there you go. All right. So, okay, so Spirit Untamed was the big feature. This is fun. This is just a placeholder, apparently. Hugo says, Spirit Untamed is a movie reboot of the reboot TV shows from the 2002 movie Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron. However it said. Yeah, so I was definitely around for the original movie. I watched that many times, mostly on home video. I don't know if I would say I liked that movie, but I have strong memories of it. And it was another one where I don't think I ever heard that subtitle when I was a kid. Maybe they didn't even have that subtitle on it until it actually released in theaters or on VHS or whatever. I don't know. Kind of like Dune Part 1, you know, where in the theater all of a sudden they're like, by the way, this is not everything. Kind of weird to add a subtitle like that. But yeah, it was just, you always just knew it as Spirit. Or I always did. But okay, so it's a reboot of the shows. The shows were spin-offs of the original movie. It all makes sense. It's all fine. It's all good. So there you have it, the twits. Interesting look. Like, would you agree that it has a kind of I was trying to highlight. It kind of has the look of a stop motion film in terms of the character designs and stuff. So I was tempted. I was a little bit tempted to say Aardman, just because when you think British stop motion, you think of Aardman, but obviously they've been working on the new Chicken Run movie for quite a while, I'm sure. So there you have it. There's that. I'm not. This is not hooking me. This new anime movie, Blue Giant. Jazz-fueled anime. Okay. Okay. And it's based on a manga? Okay, color me surprised. G-Kids is handling US distribution again. Shock and awe. Okay. Sure. Yeah, I mean, I've seen Kids on the Slope. That's a good jazz anime. Set in the 60s, I think? Late 60s, early 70s? I'll have to... Again, I can't watch the trailer here live on the stream, but I would like to. I would like to at some point, but just call it... Like, none of the descriptions here are really capturing my attention, so... We'll see. I'm not writing it off, but, you know. Tude says, sort of a meta question, but how do you avoid falling into despair when a lot of the things you talk about are actively getting worse year after year? The general you, not you specifically. Ah, I see. So just in general, people talking about stuff where things are actually kind of degrading. And there are those things. I want to make that point too. I know there's been a lot of talk, specifically here in the US over the last few years, of like people having the impression that the world is ending when really that's sort of like a Western or an American perspective on things, and that actually certain things are improving. Even so, yes, there are certain larger topics that do actively seem to be getting worse. And yeah, on Tudes, I think that question especially applies to the topic for today's stream about the major entertainment company acquisitions and mergers, as well as the strikes, right? The relationship of labor in various entertainment industries, not just film, but also video games for sure. Things like that. And those are things that I have talked about every once in a while. I also talked in the past about like the realities of earning a living from producing content on the internet, specifically YouTube or Twitch. So there are plenty of topics that I get into that do seem to be getting progressively worse. I think and also, I don't know how many details I really want to share on this, but I have been considering making some videos for a completely different channel that are all very much about a topic that just continues to get worse and worse over time, in my opinion. So it applies a little bit to that too, but I don't want to... That's a different thing, you know, we can save that for some other time. But either way, I understand what you're saying, and I have had the experience of talking about some of those things. And the other sad part of this is that I actually am getting older too. So to me, it feels like it was only recently when people on the internet started to talk about like the glut of remakes and reboots of existing properties in mainstream filmmaking. That feels brand new to me, even though those conversations have been present and prominent for 10 to 15 years. Like it's been a much longer time than I feel like. And it's... that side of it is upsetting to me too. Just the fact that I have been around kind of long enough to see certain things get worse. But anyway, to actually answer the question, I think it comes down to seeing how people respond to the way you talk about those things. So for, you know, if for example, you talk about this stuff to friends and family, whoever, or you have an online audience, something like that, and the response is always negative, and the response is just like, oh, we don't care, there's general disinterest, that makes it so much worse, and that makes it so much harder to talk about things in general. However, if the responses are more active and even positive. Like if people generally seem interested in the topic overall and they want to talk about it at all, even if there's disagreement and people end up yelling at each other, I think that's a much better state of affairs. And it can be much more motivating to start those kinds of conversations as opposed to conversations where nobody gives a shit. Like, if nobody's interested, it feels like a worse sign, and you feel more isolated, I think, in your own views of the situation, and you feel like, oh no, things are getting worse and nobody cares. But if people are interested, if they want to talk about it, if they want to argue about it, that's a good sign, because it means that at least there's potential in the future to get people to be more active and to try to, spark some kind of change. Anyway, so I hope that's not like a glib answer or over explained or anything. I'm sorry, but anyway, it's tough. It's tough in general. So I definitely I can commiserate with you on that if you've been having similar conversations with people in your life. Like about Trolls, like about how I'm a massive Trolls fan now. And I'm going to watch the trailer, but not before catching up. Stop playing the trailer. Ugo says the world is getting better for lots of people, and the USA is losing power, and the world becomes more multipolar world. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was, or that's some of what I was touching on earlier with the American perspective of things going down the tubes. At the same time, it's not necessarily a great thing for the US to lose power depending on who else is gaining power on the world stage. I mean, without getting into heavy politics stuff. I'm not saying that the American empire is a good thing, or that the US should continue to have such massive military, economic, social, and media influence over most of the rest of the world, but they're a little less awful than some other places in certain areas. So I'll say that, but I agree with your statement. Tude says, a fixation on the idea of the world ending can be used as a way to distract yourself from the much sadder and more boring, but almost equally horrifying reality. Wow, it's very well put, Tudes. I like that. And I agree, of course. I mean, like I usually say, I think we agree on a lot of stuff. Yeah, and in general, like, people talk about like anger or, even grief and some what would generally be considered more negative emotions potentially being really powerful tools for staying motivated to just engage with the world and to try to do things that you think would be helpful. But you're right, it's incredibly easy to dip down into the sludge of just like, oh, and here's my day-to-day reality. And yes, it is bad too, or not what I want, or is making me face certain things about the way the modern world is. That can be such a, that leads to the opposite of action. That leads to, sedentary life. That leads to, oh, things are bad, there's nothing I can do about it, I guess I'll just hang out. Not great. Like, it is good to take breaks from serious subject matter and not make yourself feel overwhelmed by everything that's happening. At the same time, I do think there's value in hanging on to some of the those feelings of anger or injustice or whatever we want to call it. I think those can be really good motivators. And it's also about the difference between the specific and the general. If you're saying the world as a whole is degrading, is becoming worse, that's not as helpful as focusing on specific topics, right? Where you can take action or where you can monitor for changes and things like that. So anyway, yeah, but it's a big topic. Ugo says, reboots have been happening for over 60 years. A Star is Born has been remade 4 times. So, yes. I think usually what people are referring to when they talk about like, oh, there's, so many remakes and reboots, I think it's more about the window of time between each installment, right? Or between reboots, especially of an entire franchise. So even if we're just talking about straight remakes like Star is Born, okay, what? The first one was 20s, 30s? Next one was in what, 50s, 60s? And then we jump forward to the one from the 2010s. So those are at least some decent gaps. Now compare that to, I always like to use the examples of the superhero stuff, specifically Batman and Spider-Man. So it's, you know, obviously those properties have been around for 50, 60 years ish. How the amount of time between specific reboots of those have been decreasing, or at least they've compressed a great deal. So while previously it was maybe 10, 15 years between one Batman show and then another big Batman movie, now we have 3 different Batmans within like 10 to 15 years. We have 3 different Spider-Mans and more by now within about 10 years. Like that's, I think the sticking point is the rate at which stuff is being rebooted and remade, and how small a selection of stuff is being remade relevant to the broader world of all media that's ever been created. So your points are valid. Like, obviously there have been remakes and reboots for a very long time, arguably since the beginning of, you know, film cinema. Is that a phrase? But the rate does seem to be increasing, at least for certain properties. And that's a little bit troubling, you know? And Murder on the Orient Express as well. Yep. Riley Cooper. Right. Oh, okay, thank you. You had the dates for me for Star is Born. So 54, 76, and 2018. I thought there was another one earlier, but I might be thinking of the one from the 50s. Ugo says Death at a Funeral was remade. The first one was in 2007, and then in 2010, the Peter Dinklage plays the same person. There you go. Talk about a really brief window between versions of the same thing. Or another really interesting one is like cultural remakes, right? So, oh my gosh, why can't I think of an example right now? There will be stuff that releases in some other country that's not the US, and then they decide that they want an American version. They don't think the original version would play well in the US, or it's in a foreign language, so you can't have that. So they remake it for American audiences. My gosh, my first video ever, I think, was about Downhill, which was the US remake of Force Majeure, the wonderful Swedish movie. Yeah. Rate of remakes, for sure. Tude says, I believe the proper plural term is spiders men, and then corrects, I meant spiders man. I do, okay, well, I'm glad you corrected, because I like spiders man more than spiders men. I want to hang on to the man there. Ugo says, like, Old Boy? Yes, that's another really good example. Where Spike Lee... Didn't Spike Lee make the US version of that? Oh my god. Oh my god. What a time. Okay, hang on. Well, not hang on. I'll still be here. But I am going to watch this trailer, this Trolls trailer in silence, just because I want to see. I want to see if it's going for a new style, or if it's the same kind of like high horsepower contemporary but not pushing the boundaries kind of style of the other Trolls movies. Okay, new NSYNC song, which is, yeah, why not? Why not? Can you imagine? How much money do you think it cost to get the rest of NSYNC back in the studio to do this one song? Was it $5? Was it $8? Alright, so far I am not seeing anything outstanding in this. Are they getting married? Wow, this is what DreamWorks has been working on. Okay. Okay, come on. Give me some stuff. You know how YouTube shows like the most watched moments? It's all at the end. So apparently all the good stuff's gonna happen at the end. What does that look like for my videos? I think for my videos it would just be a flat line. It would just be like, a few people watch this. Okay. Alright. Okay, come on now. Yeah, I'm gonna speed this up. This is, it's not blowing me away, but it does look fine. It looks as good as or better than the Mario Brothers movie in terms of visual presentation. I'm just kidding. Of course it looks better. Looks much better. Okay. Okay, so no, not really. Apparently there's just one particular 2D sequence that is very psychedelic inspired. That's all we got. I thought maybe the whole movie would have a different art direction, but that does not seem to be the case. That's okay. All right. I will continue to defend trolls, I think. Try not to sing challenge. 10 minutes. 30 million views. There you go. That's all you got to do. Just get together some movie clips of characters singing stuff. What is Elsa and Jack Frost Faded? Is that some kind of fan pro? Sorry, I'm not signed into this browser, so I'm getting very interesting recommendations. Okay. Hugo says Lake House was a Korean movie, then Keanu Reeves starred in the USA version. Ah, I see. Okay. I haven't seen that one. I've definitely seen both. No, not both Old Boys. I saw the original Korean Old Boy, and I did not think I should bother with the remake. Hugo also says, I think they all had to pay to be part of NSYNC. Except for Justin Timberlake. It was his idea. It was his clubhouse. There's an admission fee for everybody else. Corbin, welcome to the chat. Good to see you here. Thanks for joining us. Corbin says, on topic, by the way. Thank you, Corbin. Corbin says, I feel like it would be in Apple's best interest to just scale their own production up to Disney level. So, you know what? Let's get to it. Let's get to it. I did pull up quite a few articles here that can maybe help us, you know, work this thing out and say some moderately intelligent things about the whole situation. In the meantime, hello, Christian. Good to see you here again. How you doing? What you been up to? Okay, so this is where it started for me. On a previous stream, it wasn't this article exactly, but it was mentioned in another article on this site. Like, hey, Disney has seriously been considering splitting up their traditional TV business stuff with their core brands, like with the Disney identity that we get now through Disney Plus, Star Wars, Marvel, etc. And the idea there is that then they would be more appealing to other giant companies that would potentially want to buy them out. Why would Disney want anybody to buy them out? They are not too small. They're not trying to expand their scope by any means. However, they're losing a lot of money. They are losing hundreds of millions of dollars per quarter, per 3 months, through Disney Plus stuff. Getting it established, producing new content for Disney Plus, and I assume just maintaining it. You have to have your software teams, you got to have your networks up and the servers and all that stuff, right? Total losses since 2019 in excess of 11 billion. Not small change to anybody. It's a sort of acceptable loss for Disney. However, it's not good news, especially for a company that's publicly traded. Therefore, to keep shareholders from getting nervous, to maintain this image of we're the most successful people ever, they would like to be acquired. Thank you, ads. Most news sites and analysts are saying no. Most of them are saying, realistically, no way. Apple is not going to buy Disney, and apparently there have even been comments from Apple directly just saying, look, no, we're not doing it. We're not interested in this. And as people have rightly pointed out in some of these articles, it's just not very realistic to Apple's brand identity. So yes, it makes sense in the sense that Apple's streaming efforts have been bad. I don't know if anybody's seen numbers on this, and if you do know, let me know about it. Give me the numbers. As far as I know, Apple TV Plus, or whatever it's actually called, has not been profitable and has not been generally popular. If someone can find subscriber numbers for that service, I would be really curious to hear about that. So on that level, sure, they're not successful in streaming and content creation stuff. Disney is incredibly successful there, despite the fact that they're still losing money. Okay, sure, that addresses a need within Apple, but ultimately that stuff is a relatively small slice of Apple's total business. Most of it is this stuff. Most of it is high-end consumer products that have the Apple halo around them. Just saying, we're the best. Don't worry about stats and all that stuff. Just, it's the best. Our branding is immaculate. And that's another thing that I was thinking about when researching some of this stuff, is just that Apple has such particular branding that it would be extremely difficult for them to integrate Disney into that brand identity. I just don't think it would work very well, you know? I'll pause there. I want to catch up on chat stuff, but this was another little piece of the puzzle, is that apparently there is at least one other giant company interested in potentially buying Disney. So even if we won't consider, you know, even if we decide, no, Apple's definitely not going to make the purchase, someone else very well might. And that's still kind of a scary idea to me. Like, even that is still a huge event, a huge possibility. Anyway, again, pause, and I'll say hi to everybody. Toot says every superhero whose name starts with an animal and ends in man needs to face a villain with the inverse name. Man-Bat, for example. Who's an animal with the powers of a human? Powers of a human is a wonderful phrase. And my mind is going crazy trying to think of what the different human powers would be. I want every inverse superhero or villain to have like completely distinct human powers. So one of them is like really good at calligraphy. And then another one has the perfect head shape to wear hats. And maybe another one could like be good at arguing on the internet. That would be very valuable. Yeah, sky's the limit with that one. I think I'm on board for that. That's great. Christian points out, Apple owns Peanuts. It's true. So if Apple TV doesn't pick up there probably won't be any more new Peanuts specials, I think. Yeah, and it's weird too, because wasn't the 2015 Peanuts movie, isn't that on Disney Plus? I'm pretty sure that's where I watched it. So the way that the rights worked out there is confusing to me. Either way, the point is well taken, and I do want Peanuts to live on, even if Peanuts doesn't seem to be, you know, I mean, it's definitely not popular as it was previously, for sure. Same thing with the Muppets. Like, these are things that I want to live on forever, but if they don't have the lifeblood, and if they don't have some confident funding behind the scenes, then it won't happen. There just won't be enough. Look at it. Wow, so many ads on this page. I apologize for that. Ugo says, back when Frozen 2013 came out and DreamWorks' Rise of the Guardians in 2012, many fans shipped Elsa and Jack. I see. They were wild. So many videos and fan art. It was just because they both had ice powers. Well, it's because they had ice powers and they're of opposite genders. What more can you ask for to create the foundation for a successful relationship, right? Wow, fan videos or like shipping videos. Do people still do that stuff? I really hope they do. That's such a lovely, weird subculture that I really appreciate. Also, never saw Rise of the Guardians, by the way. Christian Bailey says, I don't know how to spell special. Oh, that's cool. Don't worry about it. I mean, this is just in case you're curious, that's how. But I like that it still worked phonetically. Like, I still recognize it as special, and I kind of like your spelling better, so go with that forever. But yeah, we got it. But yeah, totally true about the Peanuts stuff. I assume you're a Peanuts fan, Christian? Would you agree? Have you kept up with the modern stuff as well? I love Peanuts. I used to read the daily comic strip in the newspaper because we got the newspaper. We got the daily paper for a long time. Watched as many of the specials as I could get my hands on in the VHS era, which really wasn't that many. They made a lot more. But anyway, yeah, I hope Peanuts keeps up. If Apple is in sole, has sole ownership and is in control of the future of that property, I'm not so confident. Yeah, I just don't think Apple TV Plus has been very popular, right? Let's see if we can find anything on it. Let's see. Ugo says Peanuts movie was done by Blue Sky, which is owned by Fox, so that's why it's on Disney Plus. Yeah, good. Thank you for reminding me. That is something I talked about in that video. So I should have known, and I talked about it again recently because Blue Sky was making Nimona before Disney bought them, and then Disney said, no, Blue Sky, don't make Nimona, and then they said, you're dead, Blue Sky. So that makes sense. It's part of that acquisition more so than anything else. Perfect. Gotcha. Cool. Tude says Apple's streaming content strategy was definitely appealing, but I don't know how they thought it would be profitable. Their brand wasn't established enough in the TV movie sphere. Definitely, that last point is absolutely true. Yeah, I think it's just... I think you can definitely get the sense from the early Apple TV Plus like ads or web promotions or things. They're aiming for a specific demographic, or they were at the time. And that demographic was definitely not us, right? I mean, I don't know everybody's age here, but I'm going to assume that we're not over the age of 40 for the most part. And that we're not like software engineers getting ready to retire in Northern California. You know what I mean? Like, even just signing on Steven Spielberg, like that's a huge deal for a big subset of viewers, of audiences over a certain age. And, you know, younger, everybody knows Spielberg, and film geeks love Spielberg for obvious reasons. But that's not a get for the younger audiences necessarily. You know what I mean? So they have done a handful of things that would apply, that would really appeal to younger audiences. Wolfwalkers, I guess, is an obvious example. But again, yes, not established. They're established in terms of the technology. Also, plenty of people had the physical Apple TV boxes in their houses. If they were big into the Apple ecosystem, they had that. So maybe that was part of the integration. Like, oh, this is an expansion of our product line. Maybe they even, I think they do offers too, right? Where you get a certain number of months of Apple TV Plus for free when you buy a new Apple product. So I can see it making sense from a certain angle, but I do agree that, like, especially in terms of the sheer amounts of original or new stuff, as well as legacy properties that streaming services need just to compete, not even necessarily to thrive, it's too much. You know, I just think it's incredibly hard to have a new player all of a sudden in this space. It's giant companies who already have a lot of properties to their name just duking it out. And I think that's what it will continue to be for quite a while. Anyway, let's see. I did type special in the chat. Sorry. Hope that wasn't too much. Dude says only HBO had a brand strong enough to sustain a prestige streaming service. Yeah, if we're going for the word prestige specifically, I agree. I mean, you know, you can argue Disney, but it's a different kind of prestige that they would offer. It wouldn't be prestige in the Breaking Bad sense or the White Lotus sense. So absolutely. Yeah. Hugo says Rise of the Guardians is on Netflix. It's a good movie. Oh, cool. All right. Why am I getting that mixed up with Guardians of Ga'Hoole? The movie with the owls. Are they related or no? I watched the Zack Snyder Owl movie. I did do that. Corbin says Microsoft or Amazon would get Disney first, in my opinion. Okay. Apple loves being cash rich, and an M&A of this scale would bite into that, though my prediction is Microsoft gets Netflix soon-ish. Interesting. Okay. Few different things. First of all, great comment. Super useful stuff. So this ties into extremely current events. I don't know if you guys have been following video game news stuff. A whole bunch of additional documents, internal Microsoft documents, got released by accident by Microsoft within the last few days because of a mistake they made with their court proceeding against the FTC for their acquisition of Activision. Man, that's a long explanation, but that's what's been happening. So people have been digging through like confidential private emails between Phil Spencer, other executives, teams, PowerPoint presentations for different meetings with the executives. And long story short, one of the most interesting things to come out of that was that Phil Spencer himself, the head of Xbox man, straight up said in one of these emails, I want to buy Nintendo. I want to buy Nintendo. We're in talks to buy TikTok. This is a couple years ago. We would like to buy ZeniMax. We would like to buy Warner Brothers Interactive. And there's this endless appetite, it seems, for acquisitions. We know that Microsoft has no shortage of funds. They are plenty liquid if it comes time for them to try to buy someone else out, and they have been doing that quite a bit. Xbox specifically has been doing that quite a bit with smaller studios, but then, of course, ZeniMax is pretty big. Activision is massive. It'll probably go through soon enough. So I'm not bringing this up to talk about Nintendo specifically, but just to say that this makes it very clear that not just Disney, not just Apple, not just Microsoft, but a lot of these companies do have plenty of money saved up, and they have an endless appetite for growing larger and for gobbling up major industry players who could substantially improve their position in any given market where they want to have dominance. And of course, Microsoft themselves, for decades at this point, has had a long history of extremely aggressive market dominance, let's say, in certain areas. So I'm not dismissing any of these major acquisitions as possibilities. Like, no, not all of them will go through. There is always potential for them to go through anyway. There's just, you would think we would reach a point where they don't care as much about the M&A stuff. We have not reached that point, and we're nowhere near it. So that's why I had that pulled up. Just to kind of, it's an adjacent point to everything else we're talking about today. But still, big deal. And yeah, Corbin, I think those are some interesting ideas of specifically grabbing Netflix. And Netflix is another one. We talked earlier about how Disney Plus has been losing huge amounts of money just from trying to sustain Disney Plus and create new stuff for it. Netflix has been deficit spending pretty much since their inception, as far as I know. Like, they have continued to spend more money than they bring in. It's still a valuable company, despite that, and especially their market position is incredibly valuable. At the same time, you can absolutely see the executives over at Netflix being eager to accept some acquisition or merger offers, because then their problems are solved. Whatever kind of baggage they're carrying around, whatever kinds of debts, they're erased because a giant, extremely successful multinational company has just now owns you, and they're the bank. They're your bank for all of time. Anyway, it's a lot. It's a lot. Let me get caught up here. And Amazon, just another massive company that has plenty in its coffers with which to snap up other companies. Christian says, did you know the animated short The Boy, the Mole, and the Horse that won last year's Oscar race was an Apple TV original? No, I didn't. So it's just a short, huh? But they commissioned that? That's interesting, too. I wonder how much of that was in, like, do you think they intended it to be an Oscar bait kind of thing from the very start? Because, again, talking about, like, being seen as a prestige brand in the world of entertainment, Oscars are extremely helpful for that. Oscars make careers in Hollywood because they give you that impression of quality and sophistication. So again, I'm sure it's a great short. I haven't watched it, by the way. Again, it's hard to access the shorts sometimes. But highbrow, right? Relatively highbrow. It gets that boost from the award. And even just being nominated can give you a boost in terms of optics. So, very interesting. And also just probably something that I should check out. I don't think I have an Apple TV login anymore. But we'll see. I'll do some asking around. Maybe I can break my way in there. Let's see. Ugo says Apple TV. Severance is a good TV show. Oh, is that was Severance an Apple TV show? Oh, okay. It stars Christopher Walken and others. Created by Dan Erickson and directed by Ben Stiller and Alfie McCardle. Alfie? Sorry, I'm not familiar with that name. Cool. Yeah, I've heard the name. We might have talked about it here before on the channel. But either way, neat. I mean, again, I would need to have a login to check it out. But there you go. And then Ugo is also talking about the short there. It's a good movie. Feels like a moving book due to the art. Okay, sounds like a cool art style. Hang on, let me see. Also, apparently Apple TV Plus is estimated to have 25 million paid subscribers. And then 50 million who have it on a promotion or a limited time basis or something. How about Netflix? Netflix has roughly 238 million paid subscribers. Okay, well, that gives you a little bit of an idea as to how those streaming services stack up. But there you go. Corbin says, I specifically say Netflix because Microsoft is now their ad provider. So they're chummy. Amazon already owns MGM. Yeah, Amazon's been buying up more than we think, especially just in terms of specific like properties and series. So not necessarily entire like studios and media entities, but they have been acquiring quite a lot for a good long while now. And to be honest, Amazon Prime Video is not terrible. Like there's terrible stuff on it, but that goes for just about every streaming service. So unfortunately, I think they've actually done a pretty good job of bolstering that service, and the fact that it is part and parcel with the Prime memberships that so many people already have, like it's just a shoo-in. Like obviously, you're naturally going to get a huge number of active users, because it's basically an add-on, you know, a free add-on to a service people already want. But that's a really good point to say that Microsoft is handling ads for Netflix. I knew that Netflix, of course, integrated ads quite a while ago. I did not know that Microsoft was sort of handling the ad integration stuff, but that makes a lot of sense to me. And yes, that does ultimately give them an inroad for those kinds of conversations with a company. So we'll see. Sorry, I should put something else up on the screen here. We can't just look at this one still from Trolls Band Together for the rest of the time. I forgot I had some sour jelly beans. Chewing jelly beans on stream. Yeah, I'm gonna take a look, Christian, at stuff for the new special. Is it One of a Kind Marcy? August 18th. Wait, so it happened? The people who make the biggest difference aren't the ones who grab the spotlight. That's actually, okay. Yes, it sounds corny, but that's actually a good premise. Okay, so super detailed backgrounds. I see what you're saying about the lighting. The characters still look relatively flat and traditional. That's not an insult. I'm just referring to how the color is used. Okay. Oh, here you go. I mean, hey, you know, Christian, you especially, I think, are at least talking me into watching the stuff that is on Apple TV Plus, regardless of whether I actually use the service. I'll probably watch them. Actually, hang on. Sorry. I should do this every time. Oops. Special. What was the short we were talking about? The boy. Well, and the horror. I'm gonna use an Oxford comma there. What was it was anything else recommended? What was the Guardians movie? Rise of the Guardians. These are suggestions, so if anyone has any other suggestions, throw them out there. I will keep them logged right here. Alright. Awesome. Now you can see some icons as well. Cool. Ugo says Amazon is maybe burying money. Overspend on that movie Air, the one with Ben and Matt, about the shows they lost, about 100 million or more on just that movie. Well, sure. As soon as you talk about any particular movie budget for, you know, original stuff, massive bills. If it's a movie on par with contemporary Hollywood, then it's going to be at least 100 million, probably a lot more, as well as roughly an equal amount for marketing if you want to compete with other contemporary Hollywood stuff and theatrical releases. So I'm assuming you're saying that they're burning money, they're just throwing money at this stuff. They certainly have the money to spend, especially after pandemic times when they, you know, made more money than any other time in human history. So I get that. However, they're also doing things through, what is it? Is it just called Amazon Studios, or does it have a longer name? That's when they essentially just handle distribution for a movie that's already made, or at least that's the impression I get. So that's what they did with the Pavel Pawlikowski movie Cold War. I think that's what they did with the Italian remake of Suspiria from a few years back also, is they're just the distributor. So like the movie was already being made, maybe they supported it financially somehow, but overall they're just paying for the distribution rights, most likely in the US and a handful of other countries. And so they don't have to worry about paying for the production budgets on those, right? So just getting rights for distribution, which is what GKids does, by the way, with basically all foreign animation, can be much more cost effective than completely original work that you're funding from start to finish. So it's another interesting aspect of trying to stay competitive in streaming today, you know. Let's see. Christian says, do you just pirate stuff? You don't have a streaming service for the things you want to talk about? No, I don't pirate stuff anymore. I don't do that anymore. No. College time? Yeah. College time, I really didn't have any money, and we would all just use, not even downloading stuff, but we would just use there's one particular famous website where you can just watch a bunch of animated things. So yes, we used that a lot, especially for things that we wouldn't be able to access. And that's the other thing, is that when I was in college, streaming services were still basically brand new. So it was just plain hard to find stuff. And as we've talked about before, I'm sure, the best way to deter piracy is to make it convenient for people to access the stuff they want to watch or play legally. And most of the streaming services up until recently have done a good job of that. So yeah, so Christian, I don't know if you were here for the somewhat recent stream, but there was another stream topic where it was like, which streaming services should I actually hang on to? And right now, I think I have like 4 or 5 if we're not counting video game subscription services, right? And part of it is I wanted to pare it down. I was like, I just can't spend this amount of money on, streaming entertainment stuff every single month. So from there, I did drop it down a little bit. I still have quite a few of the streaming services, and thankfully a lot of ones that do have a lot of animated content. Hate that word. A lot of great animated shows and movies. In particular, I really like hanging on to HBO Max, either through my own account or like chipping in on a friend's account. Like I'm sorry, that one has really kept up well with both new animated stuff and older animated stuff that I want to watch, outside of their horrible, reprehensible move to remove, Summer Camp Island and a few other great shows for bad reasons. So there's that. But yeah, I don't think there's ever going to be a time where I have every single streaming service. It's just too much. It's too much. If I start making a whole bunch more money, sure, why not? But most of the time I will, if there's something new that's animated that I really want to check out, I see it in the theater when it comes out. I temporarily get a streaming service that it's on, or I buy it. Either a digital download or a physical disc. I do get physical discs still for certain movies. Blu-rays, I think that's actually, and especially for bigger shows and stuff that I just want to have forever, that's my go-to. I would much rather have them on disc, ready to go. It's just so much better, and I can feel safe that I'm not paying for that movie or show every single month. I just get to watch it. I just get to have a good time with it, Anyway, what else can we get to this? What else can we bring to this here? Are there any additional notes we should add to this whole conversation? This is old, but this could be helpful. Produce less content and pull programming. Oh my gosh. Okay. Reduce by $1.5 to $1.8 billion. Oh my goodness. Laying off a bunch of employees. Okay. And Jamie, I assume, is correct to point out that Netflix and HBO did similar stuff. And we were just talking about that with HBO and Summer Camp Island and all that. Yeah. Anyway. So there we have it. And like yet another, this is something, Ugo, I think you've pointed this out before, and I'm sure someone else has, and it is a good point to bring up in any discussion about like the Disney, or not the Disney side, the business side of Disney, is that the entertainment stuff that we all associate them so closely with is ultimately a very small portion of the entire company, and specifically of overall revenue. So much of the money they make is from the parks, and obviously their entertainment stuff supports that. It's the foundation for all of their theme parks. But their theme parks are so extremely successful, my gosh, and successive, if we're being honest, all around the world, that they're not necessarily in a bad financial position ever, especially now that the pandemic stuff is wrapped up, in terms of, quarantining at least. They can continue to rake in the money that way. They can continue to recoup any kinds of losses from the streaming side, from the entertainment side, just through people going to their parks. Obviously, the margins are, like there is a lot of upkeep with giant amusement parks. But no, like how well Disney's streaming efforts are doing will never be the defining factor of how well Disney as a company is doing, right? So anyway, just another note, but it is important to bring up when we're talking about Disney and would someone buy Disney, whatever. Parks are huge. Parks are massive. Toot says there's no shame in owning physical media. The idea that streaming services could deliver any movie you ever wanted for $10 a month was always a fantasy. Yeah, it's it's a fantasy that the streaming services very well established in the early days because they wanted people to join and they wanted people to get used to that feeling of like, oh, I can access so much stuff for relatively little money. So I agree. I agree that it's definitely not feasible in the long run, and it's not feasible if, you know, as we all hope, the strikes are very successful. The entertainment industry strikes are very successful. They will definitely increase subscription prices for all this stuff. It's going to happen. And yeah, no, I'm a big supporter of getting the physical media for stuff that you really care about. It doesn't mean everything. It doesn't mean buy up a giant collection and fill up a closet full of movies and games that you want to have access to all the time. Not practical. But it's a great option. And I think I made a similar recommendation in an older video that was like something about how to spend less on media in general, or how to spend less on streaming stuff. And yeah, that was a big point of it. Things that you know you love and that you will continue to love for a long time, you should own the physical. You should own the physical version of that. And by the way, it is a little bit tangential again. Let me see if I can pull it up. But part of the leaks, if we want to talk about parallels in video gaming stuff, online consoles. One of the leaks revealed some info for Xbox and Microsoft's somewhat distant gaming plans for its gaming future and its gaming hardware and all that stuff. And specifically, they seem to have had very recently solid plans for a pure cloud gaming device, for a controller that would have streaming capability of some kind, and for new consoles that would also be exclusively streaming focused, right? Or at least digital download focused, like the Series S already is. So that would certainly be an interesting wrinkle for the development of physical media and for the consistency, right? We've been there for a long time with shows and movies. We've, you know, more or less abandoned physical media. It's not the way to go. It's not very cost effective most of the time, only in certain instances. And it would seem, based on this here, and also based on some stuff that Phil Spencer had talked about, I think earlier this year, Microsoft doesn't see a realistic future where physical media remains a big focus, or even where playing and running games directly on hardware that you own is a thing. They really want things to move towards streaming only, which would be, I mean, it was a major shift for traditional entertainment, and it would be a massive shift for video game stuff as well. So kind of weird, just the timing. And then if that transition does in fact happen, then all of these conversations, all of the things that we're saying with regard to the, you know, to Netflix, Disney, Amazon, Apple, and the streaming game have to be had about the different game studios, about the different game platform holders, and about the economic feasibility of maintaining those kinds of platforms. So it's a very interesting time for sure for all of these things. And yeah, we can't help but draw parallels to what's happening in the video game industry right now. And a little bit of that makes me worried. The Disney stuff, the possibility of Disney being acquired makes me worried a little bit. And the possibility of the video game industry completely transitioning to stream only. Please continue to pay us money all the time to play these games is also concerning. So we shall see. I don't have high hopes that Disney would be acquired by another big brand known for entertainment. If anything, I feel like it would end up going to some random parent company or giant investment firm, a situation like that, where they wouldn't even want to change anything about the Disney brand identity. they just want to make money from it. So Apple seemed unlikely. A lot of other people seem to think that Apple buying Disney is extremely unlikely, just to address the main topic of this whole stream. But outside of that, completely plausible that someone else will end up buying them up. And as we've been talking about here in chat, extremely plausible that some of the other big players currently in the streaming space will also be acquired or merged, and that would completely alter the landscape and how we all need to adjust and budget out our entertainment fund. Ugo says he independent reports Crater lost $53.4 million to make. Premiered on May 12th and was removed from Disney Plus a scant 48 days later. Wow, they pulled it within 2 days. But also 53.4 million isn't that much, right? Unless it ended up looking very bad. Ugo says it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. Thank you for the comment. Have you been reading some Mark Fisher lately? Dude says, back when Microsoft had their big debacle with the Xbox One announcement, I was mildly defending them. Now I feel nothing but dread looking at their idea of a streaming-only future. I totally understand that. Sorry, I won't go into it for too long. I probably have to go. I actually have some more work to do tonight. It's been a very long week, and it's Tuesday. I'll just briefly say that, I mean, yes, for one thing, I agree. There was big controversy around the Xbox One announcement. Terrible brand image, terrible optics around that time. They have mostly recovered, I think, in the Phil Spencer era. However, the streaming-only stuff, I think it's a double-edged sword. Like everything. That's not very insightful, is it? I think, on the one hand, really accessible game streaming is good news. I think that's really good news for someone who, frankly, just doesn't have $300, $500, or like $2,000 to buy a capable PC, able to run brand new games. It's good on that side of things. I am okay with that. And, well, assuming that those machines or services would be reasonably priced. But obviously the subscription model is always the downside. It is always the other edge of the sword. I made a big video about this a long time ago. Plenty of other people have talked about this concept in general, but there has been a massive migration of multiple major industries, not just entertainment, towards subscription models, and that in itself is troubling. Just the idea of not really owning anything and only having, recurring payments for temporary permission to use something or to watch something or play something, whatever, is concerning. And it is not good news for the average person. It is typically good news for the companies that convert to the subscription model. Overall revenue tends to shoot up significantly. It basically saved Adobe a few years back. I don't like it. There are just times where it's unnecessary. There are times when it makes sense, and I'm on board, and that does happen with some of the streaming services right now. And there are other times where it absolutely doesn't make sense, and it's just bad for the consumer overall. So it's both. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I also have just complete dread when I hear about Xbox wanting, or Microsoft and Xbox wanting to go streaming only. At the same time, yeah, I from their perspective, I can understand some of the reasons and how certain customers would benefit from that, but definitely not everybody. Dude says, and I say that as someone who pre-ordered Stadia and beat Celeste on it. Well, first of all, congrats on beating Celeste, because I won't do that. I like the game. I will not beat it. Yeah, well, in Stadia, yeah. Google's gaming efforts, including their recent efforts to do mobile games on PCs, is the whole thing. Probably too much for today. But also, Stadia was never trying to market itself as the be-all, end-all. It wasn't trying to be like, this is the only thing you'll ever need to play video games. It always felt like a supplemental thing. Like, oh, we have certain exclusive games, you know, big stuff. If you don't have another way to play these games, you can play it on here. So I think that really helped, especially in attracting core gamers. You know, attracting people who would otherwise be scared off by the idea of streaming only stuff. Anyway. Wow. Okay, well, there it is, I think. I think we've made it. I think we've more or less finished out the stream. So I will just take a minute or two to cool down and to say thanks to everybody. But yeah, I really do gotta working some long hours lately. Really quick channel note stuff. I did shoot some footage for a video about live action remakes of animated stuff, not specifically about One Piece, but that came up in the video too, so maybe I'll publish that, maybe not. that's in production technically, and a few other things that I have in the works, so I promise there will be more videos. Just been very, very busy. But yeah, hey, in the meantime, the streams are so much fun. I really like getting to chat with everybody, and so I'll say, yeah, thank you, of course, to everybody coming out for the stream live, especially all the very nice people who have appeared in the live chat, because that's what makes the streams happen. I say it every time. I would not keep the stream running if nobody was talking. And thank you also to the lovely people, I don't know what, 50 or so people who end up watching the stream archive later on. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Even if you just like it as like a background podcast kind of thing, that's perfect. That's awesome. But yeah, that's all for now. New video when I can get there. Thanks again. Yeah, have a good one. Thanks for stopping by.